Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about another one of the anti-aging effects that lifting weights has on our body. I'm sure we've all heard that as we get older, generally speaking, we move around less. And because of this, our bones and our muscles get weaker, and this makes it more challenging for us to do the things that we previously loved to do. But this doesn't have to be the case. And so today we are going to be talking about that anti-aging effect that lifting weights has, because it helps to combat specific diseases that are associated with aging. In particular, today we're going to be talking about osteoporosis. We're going to be talking about what osteoporosis is. We're going to be talking about how to combat osteoporosis. We're going to talk about how exercise works for increasing our bone strength. And then we're going to talk about how you can program and how you can lift to increase your bone strength and combat osteoporosis. Before we get into it, guys, if you could like and subscribe, that would be amazing. And make sure to hit that little notification bell so that you don't miss out on any videos in the future. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Now, osteoporosis is a disease generally categorized by a decrease in your bone mass. And with this comes an increased risk of fractures, of pain, and it also brings about decreased independence and decreased functional mobility. In extreme cases of osteoporosis, it can mean that our bones become so weak and fragile that even a really big cough could mean that one of our ribs breaks. And from that image, it's not hard to imagine how this disease can be so strongly associated with increased risk of physical disability and also exacerbated negative health effects. There are medications that can combat the progression of osteoporosis, but this again is a burden to our healthcare system. It's a burden to ourselves. It can be really expensive. But thankfully, exercise training has been recommended as a low-cost and safe non-pharmacological treatment strategy for the conservation of musculoskeletal health. And in particular, one of my favorite things on the face of this earth to talk about, resistance exercise, are where the main benefits are at. Resistance training, you might have heard the term bodybuilding, weightlifting, strength training, all of those things thrown around, but essentially it's picking up heavy objects and putting them back down again. Resistance training has been evidenced time and time again to be incredibly beneficial for the maintenance of our muscle and our bone mass. But oftentimes, resistance training doesn't help to just preserve or maintain your muscle and bone mass, but it can actually increase it beyond that baseline point that you started at. And I know if you're struggling with something like osteoporosis right now, then this can sound too good to be true, but I promise you lifting weights can absolutely be the solution that we're all looking for. And I'm going to tell you how this works. Bone, like our muscle, is a tissue, and it goes through an adaptive process based on what we do to it. So if we stop using our body, for example, if we're just completely flat, we lie down in bed for a week, then we actually decrease our bone mass by a rate of about 1% per week. But it's not just the bone mass, it's also the bone strength, stiffness, all of these things. But this relationship works the other way around as well. When we do resistance training, we place a mechanical load on our bodies that increases the muscle mass, and it produces a mechanical stress on our skeleton. This stress increases the activity of our bone cells, specifically osteoblasts. They're the builders of our bones. And what is critical to this process is that the mechanical load that we put on our bones has to be higher than what we generally experience in day-to-day life. So for example, every day I walk. This means that my body weight is going through my joints every single day. I might go get the groceries, and then that means that the weight of my body plus the groceries are going through my joints every single day. So in order to stimulate that bone building process, the mechanical load that we put on our body has to be greater than all of that. It has to be greater than just us, and it has to be greater than the little bits of weight that we move around in our daily life. And that is why resistance training is so wonderful, because we use a variety of loads, and often they're heavy ones. But here's the tricky part. Our bones are very clever, and they're very sensitive little things. They will only adapt to the stresses that we place on them. So if we only ever did a squat, no other exercise, then our bones would only adapt and strengthen the areas that they feel the mechanical strain going through. And because of that, our bone formation, or our bones, are thicker and stronger generally in those points where we have high strain going through. And it's only in those areas where the mechanical stress is higher that we have the porosity, or the little holes in the bones, osteoporosis. It's only in those areas that that is reduced. But now I'm going to focus on telling you how all of that information that I just said helps us to decide what exercises we're going to choose. And first of all, like I have said, lifting weights is generally the way to go if you're trying to combat osteoporosis and you're trying to increase your bone strength. But if we're not up to the point of lifting weights, I do want to point out that any form of exercise is wonderful. Anything that can help us combat that complete bed rest or the immobilization, that's what we want to do. However, like I said earlier, in order to activate that adaptive response of the bone, or the osteogenesis, the bone building process, we need to make sure that there is a sufficient mechanical load being placed on our body. We need a specific magnitude of loading. And this means that if bone strength is the goal, then it needs to be a weight-bearing activity, and preferably one where we are holding additional load. An example of why, let's go back to my everyday walks, regular walking. Well, regular walking is frequently prescribed to help treat and combat osteoporosis, but unfortunately, walking has little to no effect on the prevention of bone loss. And that is because it is consistently your own body weight going through your joints. It's nothing more than that. So your bones have no reason to get stronger. They have no reason to increase the cross-sectional area or the density of your bones. And they don't need to, because they're used to what you're doing. Our bodies are great at moving us around, generally speaking. The low impact loading force applied during walking does not elicit a sufficient enough mechanical load to trigger that adaptive response in our bones. It's also not creating a sufficient distribution of that strain, and those bone cells are therefore not going to be stimulated, and we're not going to lead to that adaptive skeletal response. But speaking of distribution, remember I said that our bones are only going to get stronger if we challenge them. So if we continued with our example of only ever doing squats and doing no other exercise, well, first of all, I think you picked a pretty good exercise to choose to repeatedly do. Bone adapts to customary patterns of loading, but our bones would only strengthen themselves along the direction of force that is being applied in a squat. So if we only do movements in one plane of motion or in one direction, then our bones are not suddenly going to become strong across all areas and across all directions. And so for this reason, we need to diversify the type of exercises that we choose. And we also need to make sure that we load our bodies in different ways and we use multi-directional or multi-planar training. If you want more information on what specifically the planes of motion are, then I highly recommend you go check out my video. I explain it all really simply over there. But in short, we need to make sure that we're lunging, we're twisting, we're pushing, we're pulling. We need to make sure that we're squatting, we're hinging, we're extending, flexing, rotating, and bracing. We need to make sure that we're using so many different movements, so many different loads, so that our bones have a reason to get strong across all areas, and so that they build themselves up across different directions. Because remember, our bones are a 3D structure. Another critical aspect of lifting weights for bone strength is the frequency in which we do it. If you're not lifting at all, then simply starting off with once a week would be great. But eventually you are going to become accustomed to this. You're going to get used to it. The current guidelines for older populations are to perform muscle strengthening exercises on 2 or more days per week. So we want to try and build up to at least 2 days of lifting a week. When we're doing this, we're also trying to keep the intensity relatively high, which means we're trying to pick up heavy items. And this is particularly the case when increasing the strength of our bones is the goal. For this reason, it's generally loads over 80% of your 1 rep max that are recommended. But of course, and please listen to this, if you are not accustomed to lifting or you're just starting out, please be kind to yourself. Please start lower than that. Work with a professional. There's no rush and you will get there. I have no doubt that you're going to be able to lift heavy, but in order to do this, we need to progress safely and we need to progress at our own individual pace. So if you're new, maybe pick one exercise and do 1 set and do 8 to 15 repetitions. That way we can get used to the gym. We're not going to stress ourselves out. We're not going to stress our bones and our body out, because injuries occur when the load that we place on our body exceeds the tolerance that we have built up. So if we go too heavy too quickly, then that puts us at a place of increased risk. And then we're not going to be able to reap the benefits of lifting weights. You don't get points for hurting yourself or for rushing because you're trying to make yourself look cool or you're trying to lift what the other person in the gym is lifting. We don't get extra points for that, so take your time. With the exercises that we choose, we want to focus on compound exercises, and this means that they are multi-joint, they use large muscle groups. Ideally free weights in the form of barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells. That is how we would do this, because there's an additional stabilization and core strengthening component that we get from that in compared to when we use machines. But again, if you're starting off and this is your first time at the gym, maybe machines are good for you so that you can build up some confidence and build up some strength, all the while you're still focusing on your your bone strengthening goal. If you're starting off, any resistance training is better than nothing because the loads are already going to be more than what you're used to. And that brings me to the last point, which is progression. In order to continually strengthen our bones, in order to continuously progress at the gym, we need to continuously expose our body to loads that it's not accustomed to yet, because that is how we change and how we grow and how we adapt. Each week, this progression might look like lifting more weights, but it could also look like doing a few more reps, doing an extra set, doing an extra exercise, adding an extra day of lifting a week. And as we go through this process of progression, what's important is that you're aware that strength development is not a linear process. So as nice as it would be if it could look like this, it won't. You're not going to be able to continuously increase your performance week after week. And so it's really important that you include periods of rest in your program. Give yourself a break every now and then. So this could look like once every 4 weeks, instead of doing 2 days of lifting a week, you go down to 1 day. Just give yourself a little bit of time to rest and recover. But overall, throughout that whole process, what is most important is consistency. And with all of that, we have the start of an incredible gym program that is designed to help you increase the strength of your bones. If you haven't tried lifting weights before, I know it can be really scary, but it is so worth it. Try and find a coach that you resonate with, and that's usually the best way to start because you don't have to go through it by yourself. That being said, I am coaching, so please, if you want to work with me, just drop me a comment down below and I'm happy to send you my email address. But if it's not me, guys, I hope that you work with somebody if you're just starting out, or if you're an experienced lifter, I hope that this has reminded you that you're doing the right thing. Lifting weights and resistance training is a crucial part of our health, for our bone strength, our muscle mass, our mental well-being. It's fantastic. It's also important to help us reduce our risk of injuries, stay strong, to do the things that we love for longer, and to keep our independence and our mobility. So go get those bones nice and healthy, guys. That's what I'm off to do. I've actually got a surgery coming up in a few weeks' time, and I am focusing on my strength right now. I'm going into a strength block because I know I want to have the best possible starting point. I'm going to be in hospital for about a week and I'm going to be on bed rest. So you know what my bone density is going to do? It's going to decrease a little bit, but I'm going to try and stay as active as I can. And I highly encourage all of you guys to do the same. As always, please be kind to yourself in the process because this is your first time living life. You're doing well. You are killing it, babe. That's it from me, guys. I put out new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. It would be a massive help if you could like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. Have an amazing day, everybody. Let me know if you got some lifting done. See you guys.